I just need y'all to know that every time I clap, my dog looks at me like, what is going on? And I find it amusing. So let's do this. Let's get into this. Hello and welcome to everyone who is listening to the Written in Melanin podcast, the place where you come to get your weekly dose of melanated creativity. I'm your host, C.M. Lockhart, an author of fantasy books featuring black girls who aren't all that nice, and the owner of the Melanin Library, an online database of books written by black authors. And in this space, I share with you everything I've learned on my journey as a black and indie author. I'm glad you're here. So welcome to episode number 31, you guys. And as writers, we are often tasked with creating whole worlds from nothing. We have to create worlds, lore, locations, cultures, everything. And it can be easy to let the characters who live in them become an afterthought. But they are the heart of the story, so it's imperative that they feel real to the reader. And today I'm going to be sharing what I know and what I have learned about giving characters character. But before we get into that, I want to actually share with you guys some of the things that I've been reading. So normally on the podcast, I don't really share what I'm getting into, but I kind of want to do this because in this new era that I'm going into, now that I'm 28, for those of you who don't know, my birthday just passed on this past Friday, on October 14th. And now that I'm 28, I'm going into a new era. I kind of want to share with you guys some of the things that have been on my mind that I have been reading. And there have been 3 books that's kind of been on my radar. The first one, if you're watching the YouTube video, I'm actually showing the book cover, so there's that. But the first one is actually Magnolia Flower, and this is a book by Zora Neale Hurston and Ibram X. Kendi. And basically it's a children's book, but it's a retelling of one of Zora Neale Hurston's short stories, and it's retold as a children's book, and it's really, really cute, and it's good, and it talks about these little villages called Maroons that I don't think a lot of people know about. Until I read the book, I didn't know about it, and it's basically about how when during times of slavery, slaves would run away and they would go to like deserted mountains and swamps and islands and basically just hard places to find, and they would create their own communities, their own free communities, and those places will be called Maroons. And this story is based off of one of Zora Neale Hurston's stories, and it's told in a children's story so that it's available at a younger age. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to be sharing it with my nephew because he loves to read. So I'm excited about that. The next book up on my list is Rust in the Root by Justina Ireland. And again, if you guys know me, if you know anything about me, you'll know that when I started Written in Melanin, when I decided to take writing seriously, I read Dread Nation, and that was the book that kind of sparked all of this in me to create all of this. And I really loved Dread Nation and Deathless Divide. Justina Ireland has more books, but most of them are middle grade and like Star Warsy, so I haven't read those. So this is her first young adult novel in a while since Dread Nation and Deathless Divide. So I'm really excited to get into it. It is a mix of historical fantasy because that's what she does, but it's also got like kind of like a steampunk vibe to it, and I've kind of skimmed it. I haven't gotten into it just yet because I'm finishing up some of the other books that I've already started, but it looks really good and I'm excited to get into it. And like I said, as of recording this, she's actually doing an event near me that I can drive to. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to go and meet her, because that would be totally awesome. That would be wild. But yeah, both Rust in the Root and Magnolia Flower were sent to me by Sparkpoint Studios to review and tell you guys about, so definitely go check it out. Like I said, I'm definitely going to be reading Rust in the Root, so you guys will probably hear more about this one in the future. I have read Magnolia Flower because, like I said, it's a children's book and it's really cute. The illustrations are gorgeous, and like I said, I'm definitely going to be sharing that one with my nephew. So if you are into black authors, which I hope you are because you're listening to my podcast and watching my YouTube channel, if you're into black authors and you're into black stories, I definitely recommend you checking these 2 out. That brings me to my 3rd book that I'm making my way through, and this one, y'all, it's my podcast. I can do what I want. So just know that this one is not by a Black author. This one is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. And y'all know me. Normally, I only read Black authors. Normally, that is my thing. But lately, I have just been wanting to branch out, and that is a whole other rant that I would probably talk about maybe in this podcast episode, maybe in another one. But I definitely wanted to kind of I wanted to read this one. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why I'm trying to sugarcoat it. I wanted to read this. I grew up watching iCarly, and I know that iCarly now has a reboot on Paramount Plus, and I thought about watching it, but the way my subscriptions are set up, I'm already subscribed to a bunch of stuff, and I'm just kind of like, I can't justify it. I cannot pay for Paramount Plus for this one show, at least not right now. But like I said, I grew up watching iCarly, and I really loved it. It was one of the few shows on Nickelodeon that I watched like all the time. I still walk around my house singing the theme song, like, I know, you see, somehow this world will change for me and be so wonderful. And anyway, if you don't know, Jeanette McCurdy is one of the actresses. She is the actress who played Sam on iCarly. And she has like a bunch of other roles and stuff that she's done since and prior, but that's the one that most people know her from, at least from my understanding. And she's just talking about her life and the things that she went through and like her relationship with her mom. And the title is wild. Like, I'm glad my mom died. That's wild. I would never say that. I don't feel that way. So, Mom, if you're listening to this has nothing to do with you. This is not me or my sentiments at all. But just kind of reading her story told from her perspective, it's kind of wild because you never really know what people are going through and what they're dealing with until you know. And then it's just like, wow, I would have never thought that. I would have never realized that. And some of the things that she's revealing in this book is just kind of like, wow. It would have never occurred to me that parents treat their children this way. And it's one of those things where it's just like, it's such, I'll say toxic positivity. That's not the correct term, but it's one of those things is where like, you know that your parent loves you, but the things that they're doing to you don't necessarily align with that. And you don't know what to do with that. And it's wild. And it's also really well written. I like the writing style. It kind of just sucked me in. I am more than 100 pages into it. I'm definitely going to finish it, but it's wild. I don't read memoirs. I don't read nonfiction, and I'm really enjoying this book. And I use the word enjoying very lightly because this is not the kind of book that you're excited about. It's just kind of the book that's like, wow. And you're like in shock, and then you turn the page, and then you keep going. So if you're into memoirs, if you watched iCarly at all, I definitely recommend that you pick up her book. It's very insightful. But yeah, those are the 3 things that I'm reading. If you are watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment to let me know if you guys like knowing what I'm reading and what I'm getting into and my thoughts on that, because I would like to do this more often, but we will see how that works out. Hey y'all, if you've been listening to this podcast, then you'll know that aside from writing fantasy books about Black girls who aren't all that nice, I'm also the founder of the Melanin Library. It's an online database of books written by Black authors that is constantly growing with new books added every month. It was created to make finding books by Black authors a simpler experience and to create a space on the internet where Black authors are showcased and celebrated without exception. So on this podcast, I'm going to share with you one of those authors and their book right now, and that is MAHR, Book 1 by Erin Wakefield. This book is an urban romance that follows the story of Trey and Nadia after one night together changes everything for them. Their attraction to each other is instant and falling in love is easy, but what happens after that? MAHR is a thought-provoking tale that gives you the day in the life of a first-generation Muslim woman navigating the complexities of life while trying to live a clean-cut life after a less than ideal past. This book released on September 9th, 2022, and it's available to read for free with Kindle Unlimited as of the recording of this podcast. You can read the full description of the book on the Melanin Library website, so just head to melaninlibrary.com. If you're an author and would like to see your book advertised with us, then check out the services page on the Melanin Library website or check the link in the show notes. But that's it, y'all. Back to the podcast. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. So there is some advice on the internet regarding this matter that I think everyone at some point in their writing career has heard, which is give your characters flaws. And this is the tried and true advice that everyone receives at some point. And personally, I think it is good advice. I honestly do. I think the disconnect with so many authors, especially in this current generation of books, era of books, whatever you want to call it, is that I think a lot of authors focus on giving their characters superficial flaws instead of actual flaws. And what I mean by that is superficial flaws are things that are very minor, that can be changed without much effort or thought. So think about that as, oh, they have a mole somewhere on their face, right? You can cover that up with makeup. That's not really a flaw. Or they bite their nails. Like, yes, that's a flaw, but that also can be fixed with a very simple habit change or a week of not doing it. It's not something that's integral to the character. It's very, very superficial, and it's something that if you took that away from the character, it would not inherently change the core of who they are. So for me, when you're talking about writing characters and writing real characters, their flaws have to be much deeper. They have to be ingrained into who that character is, and it has to change how they interact with the world. And I think that's the aspect of creating flaws in characters that some authors never get to, especially when they're new to writing. Because I know when I was very new to it and I was like, oh, give my characters flaws, I saw that as, oh, she needs to be like super short, or she needs to be like plus sized, or she needs to be like super rude or something like that. Like, it has to be something very superficial, and it's just like, that's not what that means necessarily. That means, do they have a deep-seated fear of like clowns and they work in a circus? You know, that's a flaw. You know, or do they have no respect for authority figures and they live under a dictatorship? Okay, that is a flaw. That is going to drastically change how they interact with the world around them. And of course, those are just examples off the top of my head, but it is imperative to think about that. And it's one of the things that I feel like, because it's been repeated so much and everyone has heard it so much, that it has kind of lost the weight that it's meant to carry behind it. But like all writing advice that's kind of oversaid and overused, I do think it's good advice. I just think that over the course of time, it's kind of lost its meaning as people have interpreted different ways, and especially as newer writers who this advice is often offered to kind of misunderstand the assignment, if that makes sense. So my first piece of advice is to give your characters real flaws, things that they cannot just fix at the drop of a hat, and things where if you as the author change this about that character, it would completely change who they are as a person. So for example, my book, We Are the Origin, one of the main characters, Sarah, one of her big flaws is that she is manipulative. She does not trust people easily. And that affects how she interacts with the world. That affects how she interacts with the other characters. That affects how other people see her. That affects how the reader views her. All of those things shape the experience that people have when they read the book. And it's like, it's important for her to have that flaw. If I take that manipulative nature away from her, she becomes a completely different character. And I think that is what a flaw is. And if you need help coming up with, okay, well, what kind of flaw should my character have? I hate to say it, but look at your friends and your family. What are the things that they do consistently that kind of irritate you? Or you could look at, you know, astrology signs. You know, if your character is a Leo, maybe that their ego and their pride is their flaw. You know, if they are, I'm not gonna pretend to know these astrology signs, but you know, maybe if they're a Taurus, they're too stubborn to accept help even when they know that they need it. You know, whatever it is, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily be linked to astrology, but it can be something that is ingrained into their personality like that. And it could also be their strength. Like if someone is very proud and they are proud of what they do and who they are, that is a strength, but they can be so proud that they don't know how to admit when they are wrong. And it affects their relationships because they end up pushing people away because they can never apologize. There are two sides to every story, and you can make any sword a double-edged one, and that's also a really good flaw to work into your character, which also leads me into my next point, which is to give your character strengths. Give them something that they are good at. And again, we are looking for depth here. We're not looking for superficial aspects of the story. We're not looking for superficial aspects like, oh, their strength is that they're really pretty. Their strength is that they're really smart. Their strength is that they're really funny. Those are very superficial and they're very common. You're going to want to dig deeper. What is it that makes this character unique? What is it that this character can do that the other characters in the book cannot? So a really good example would be the thing that popped in my head, I don't even know why, but is like Sherlock Holmes. He's incredibly intelligent and he can put puzzles together like no one else can. That is his strength, you know, but also he's pretentious. That is his weakness. His strength is also his weakness. They go hand in hand. Another really good example is from Avatar: The Last Airbender, Aang. He is extremely kind, and because he's a vegan and he values life, that is his strength. It makes him hear people, and it makes him a very good mediator, and it makes him have a strong connection to the spiritual world. But it is also his weakness because he can't kill the Fire Lord. He cannot complete the ultimate mission that he has been given, and his strength becomes his weakness. So keep in mind that a strength can be more than just, oh, they're funny, oh, they're smart, oh, they're fun to be around. Really dig deep, like same thing with their flaws. What is it that makes this character who they are? What is it that if you take this aspect of them away, they are no longer who they are anymore? That is not, I won't say it's their personality, but it's a defining characteristic of who they are. For example, my strength is that I'm a really good writer. Ooh, look at that, look what I just did there. But it's just kind of like, if you took me as a person objectively and you took writing away from me, I would no longer be the same person. My life and the choices that I have made would not look the same if I were not a writer. And it's the same thing with your characters. You want to give them something where if they did not have that, the choices and the way they interact with the world that you're putting them into would not be the same without those strengths and without those weaknesses. Those are the biggest things where if you can narrow those down with your character, almost everything else becomes 10 times easier because you know the parameters that you're working with. That being said, one of the most important pieces of advice that I have for giving your character's character is to give them a backstory that influences how they live their daily lives. And I feel like this is another aspect of creating stories that is overlooked, especially with newer writers, is you have to give people reasons for doing things, and that reason cannot be the plot. I will tell you this, and this is a slight rant, one of my biggest pet peeves, one of the reasons I will drop a book in a hot second is if the only reason a character is doing something is to further along the plot. That's not good writing. That's lazy writing. If your character would not do that without the need for them to do that to move the story along, then you need to reevaluate why you were having your character do that. It's really important that you consider that. And the way to avoid doing that is to make sure that you understand who they are as a character. And by understanding that, I mean understand their backstory. And it's kind of like if you are writing a young adult fantasy, right? Because that's a very popular genre to write in, at least one that I have read a lot in, I'll say. And the teenager has no parents, okay? You need to give them a reason why they don't have parents, because the reality of it is a 13, 14, 15-year-old who is walking around with no parental figure, no one who loves them, is not going to interact with the world in the same way as someone who has a stable home to go back to, who is not worrying about their basic necessities. How they interact with the world is going to be completely different, and that backstory is going to shape their strengths and their weaknesses. If you want to see a really good example of this, y'all know that I love anime. So the thing that came to my mind is actually an anime on Netflix. It's called Kotaro Lives Alone. And I want to say on like episode 4, episode 5, it's follows the main character, Kotaro, who's a child. He's like 4 or 5 years old. He literally just enrolled in kindergarten, and he lives alone in this anime. And the reason for that is because he no longer has parents. And so the way he lives his life is very different from his peers. And so there's an episode where one of his classmates is like, my mom won't let me do what I want to do. Therefore, I am running away from home. Run away with me. And so Kotaro, not understanding, is just like, sure, like, I'll go hang out with you or whatever. And as it's getting dark, his friend is like, oh, it's getting late. I'm sure my mom is super worried. Let's go back to your house. I'm sure your parents are worried about you. And Kotaro's like, okay. They go home, and his friend's like, where are your parents? And Kotaro is just like, I live alone. There's never anyone here to worry about me or welcome me back. And because of that, his friend is kind of open his eyes, being like, oh, this is what I have. But the point of me bringing that up and explaining that situation is because even in this one episode of this anime, you have two characters in the same, stage of life, kindergarten. They're literally in the same kindergarten class, but they have two vastly different ways of interacting with the world, because one has two parents at home who love him, and so his idea of rebellion is leaving for the day. And then you have someone else who has no parents at home, and so he doesn't even understand what running away is because he has no home to run away from. Those two perspectives they clash. And if you write that into your story, not necessarily that exact thing, but if you write that into your story and understand that where a character comes from is going to influence how they interact with the world, it's going to influence how they interact with people around them, it's going to influence how they do pretty much everything in their life. If you write that into your book, it's going to be so much better because it's going to make that character seem real. People are going to understand, like, well, he's never had anyone to care about him, so it's hard to see that even when it's right in front of him. Or, oh, this character has always gotten what they wanted, so this person saying no to them right now is literally the worst thing that has ever happened to them, and they've never experienced that before. All those little things add up to make these characters feel real and feel whole, and I think it's really important to consider, especially when you're writing these stories. My other piece of advice is to have the choices that the characters make in the book affect their futures and not just in the immediate. So have it be where their actions have consequences, because when you have characters who know that their actions have consequences, you get characters who move differently. Just like we in the real world know that there is no save point like there is in a video game, and we understand that if you kill someone, they're not just going to respawn like in a video game. So we move accordingly, knowing that our actions have consequences. When you have your characters move with that same kind of weight, they are going to move differently. And I'm not saying that, like, oh, if you have a teenager, they should think through all 1,000 scenarios. No, teenagers don't think that far in advance. But in my experience, most teenagers do have an understanding of the immediate. They do have an understanding that, hey, if I skip class today, then I am going to be missing this test, which is going to affect my grade, which is going to, affect my applications that I've been working really hard on, especially if, going back to what I said earlier, they know that their strength is their grades and their goal is to get into college, and their weakness is that they don't have any extracurriculars, and their strength is their perfect attendance. They are going to consider the fact that they would be breaking their perfect attendance and they would be getting a bad grade, so that's going to affect the thing that they are trying to achieve. Are they also going to see that, if they skip school, they're going to run into a police officer and they're going to get caught for truancy, and that's going to get them expelled from school, so going to college is no longer even an option for them? No, they're not going to see it that far into the future. But having them think about immediate circumstances and think about the future and the consequences make your characters seem real. Again, going back to Avatar: The Last Airbender, even in the first season, when Katara was considering taking that scroll from the pirates, everyone thought about the reality, like, yeah, we want the scroll, but it's not worth it. And Katara makes a decision that it is anyway, because she wants to be a waterbending master. She decides that what she wants is worth the consequence that could come from her decision, and they have to deal with that after she makes that decision. But it wasn't because of a lack of understanding. It wasn't a lack of thought. It was, I thought about it and then I made a choice. And I feel like for me, I get really exhausted with reading books with characters who don't think about anything that they're doing, because the plot dictates that this has to happen next, and the author doesn't think to consider that, would this character do this even if the plot did not dictate it? Because as I said in the beginning, if your character would not do something, if the plot did not dictate it, then you should reconsider what you are having your characters to do. That is just my 2 cents. Spend it how you like. But have them have choices that affect their futures. That's really important, and have them think about those choices. and then give them motivations to do things and to not do things. So again, giving them, going back to what I said about having them think through their choices, give them motivations. Why is this character trying to get into a specific college? Why is it important for this girl to catch the eye of this particular love interest? Why is it important for this girl who has become the chosen one to actually follow through on her destiny and defeat the queen, defeat the monarchy, defeat the demon lord, whatever it is in the story? Why is it important? What is their motivation for doing it? Is it to save their sick mother? Is it to protect their kingdom? Is it to protect themselves? Is it for money? And the reason I say give the motivations is because that motivation needs to be compelling. Because if you have someone who is already rich and you say their motivation is money, it's going to be really hard to get behind that kind of logic. But if you have someone who's always been poor, and then you have someone kind of like a snake oil salesman saying, hey, if you do this for me, you'll be rich and you'll never be hungry again. And their stomach is literally rumbling because they haven't had a real meal in 3 days and they're considering eating a rat off the street. Yeah, that's going to have a different motivation than anything else. So make sure that you give your characters motivations and you give them reasons for doing things, and that it's clear to the reader, or at least it can be made clear to the reader if they pay attention. I'm not saying that you have to do an info dump at the beginning of the story and be like, oh, Susan decided to be the chosen one to defeat the demon lord because she wanted to save her sick mother. It doesn't have to be that overt, but if you have Susan checking in on a live video feed at a hospital and, you know, there's a steady beeping on the monitor and, you know, she's thinking back on the promise that the devil made her that if she defeats the demon lord to pit him on the throne, then, you know, her mother will walk again, she'll talk again, and she can speak with her because she's the only family that she has left. Well, that makes a bit more compelling argument than she's just doing it for money. So consider that, but then also consider giving them reasons to not do things. So going back with Susan and the demon lord and the demon, maybe her reason to not help the demon lord, who also came to her with the same proposition, is because the demon lord killed her father or her brother, or she made a deal, or he's known to have a bad reputation, or what have you, whatever it is that you want it to be, you know, make it clear that there are reasons that they don't do certain things. So an example in my book, Where the Origin, is Brandy mentions in the prologue that she does not like talking to people to get information before she has to complete a job. And her reason for that is because they always ask questions and it gets messy, and because she does not like torture. Her motivations for not taking on jobs like that is because she does not like it, because she has done it before. She's like, this is not my thing. I like it to be clean and swift. That is what I prefer to do. So that plays into her character, which plays into her motivations, which plays into how she's interacting with the world. It all comes together. Everything builds off of each other. Because I feel like a lot of times people say it's like writing a book is like building a house. And I think more so it's like, it's definitely like building a house, but world building and characters are like laying the foundation, brick upon brick. If one brick is out of place, the whole thing is going to be unstable. So it's worth spending time to know what it is to do it right. Last couple of things, because this episode is getting kind of long and I don't want to be on like a super tangent, but last 3 things. 1, have your characters keep their secrets. 2, don't let them say the right thing at the right time. And 3, give them minor inconveniences to show the reader how they react to them. These 3 things go together. So 1, have them keep their secrets. One of the things that I really, 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 really dislike when it comes to books is when characters are just out here revealing secrets that they've kept to themselves forever. They've never shared it with anybody else, and all of a sudden everybody who comes along just knows. Part of the reason I don't like superheroes is because I feel like once the hero reveals their identity the first time, everybody just knows their identity, and it's like it's not even a secret anymore. It's not even a secret anymore. Why are we even pretending like it's a secret? I don't get it. So have them keep their secrets. So if someone is asking them like, hey, are you Spider-Man? Be like, no. And they keep it because it's important to them. And that's probably a really bad example because Spider-Man does ultimately end up revealing his secrets. But if something is important to them, the point of bringing this up is the fact that when characters have secrets, and they keep them, and the reader knows that they're keeping them, that adds a level of tension, that adds a level of motivation, that adds a level of character to who they are, and it adds a level of realism that makes your character real. Because the reality of it is, we only reveal our secrets to people that we truly trust. And so when you have a character revealing secrets, you're indicating to the reader that this is someone who is worth trusting. This is someone who, at the very least, this character has deemed worth having this information. So secrets should definitely be kept, and they should be kept close to the vest until you as the author decide that it's important to show a level of bonding and trust with this other character that this main character is revealing it to. Also, don't have them say the right thing at the right time. This goes in time with the secrets. No one says everything that is relevant to the conversation at one time. People have to ask questions. No one is just volunteering the entire plot of the adventure in one go. That's unrealistic. Have them keep relevant information to themselves unless they're asked for it. Have them say the wrong thing. Someone's upset with them and they know that they need to calm them down, but they're upset too, so they retaliate instead of de-escalating. Have them say the wrong thing at the wrong time, because again, that shows who their character is. And that goes into the third thing of giving them inconveniences. Have them be angry, have them be tired, have them be upset, have them be snarky, have them be hungry. Give them minor inconveniences to show how they react to it, because someone who's hungry and it's just like, hey, I'm not going to talk to you right now, yada yada yada. If they're distancing themselves, that shows that they know themselves. That shows that they have self-control and self-discipline and self-awareness that not everybody necessarily has. But if they're the type of person who gets hungry and they start smashing things and they have a short temper and they start snapping at people, that shows that they are very reactionary, that they don't have a whole lot of control over their most base desires, which would make sense if that same person is a type of person who falls into a trap because they see someone who they're angry at. The point is that there are examples of this in all types of media, whether you like to watch TV, whether you like to watch books, whether you like to watch movies, whatever type of storytelling you like to consume. If you think about it, you'll find these examples in all of the good ones. You definitely will. You definitely will. So when you're writing your own stories, keep that in mind. And if you are at the end of this podcast episode and you just kind of want the short version and you just want the tips, they are: give your characters flaws, true flaws that they cannot separate from without destroying who they are as a character. Give them strengths that are just as important and deep-rooted as the flaws. Give them a backstory that influences how they live their daily life, and have them make choices that affect their futures and not just in the immediate. Have them think through those choices and understand the weight of it, because most people move through the world understanding that their choices have consequences. Give your characters motivations to do things and to not do things, so that it's not just like they're doing things because of plot. They have a reason why they do what they do and a reason why they're not doing what could be seen as the most convenient thing or the easiest thing or what have you. Have them keep their secrets, because no one goes around blabbing their secrets to strangers. And don't let them say the right thing at the right time, because it's very rare that people do that. And if your character is always doing that, it takes away from the realism and the understanding and the connection that the reader has with them. And give them minor inconveniences to show the reader how they react to them, because how they react to minor inconveniences show more about their character in the world and how they interact with it than almost anything else that you can add into the book. Hey y'all, if you enjoyed the tips shared in this podcast episode and you're an author looking for some help with your next book, then let me tell you about my coaching services. I offer them through Written in Melanin, a company I created that's all about supporting Black authors. So if you're someone who wants some guidance on your next book, whether it's your first one or your latest one, then I'd recommend checking them out. I offer a free consultation for new clients, so don't be shy about reaching out. I'll walk you through every step of publishing your book, from narrowing down your target audience and figuring out the best way to distribute your book, to how to find a good editor, beta readers, price your book appropriately, and get it in front of readers, and answer any questions about publishing that you may have. The reality is, publishing a book yourself can be overwhelming, no matter how many times you do it. So if you're looking for some guidance and support, head to writteninmelanin.com to see if I would be a good fit to help. But that is it for what I have to tell you guys about why characters should have character, and that is it for this episode of the Written in Melanin podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening as I share what I've learned on my journey as a Black and indie author. If you'd like to support my podcast, then please share it with someone you think may enjoy it. Join my Patreon at patreon.com/cmlockhart, or grab a copy of my book, We Are the Origin, from my website, cmlockhart.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, please tap the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications. There are links in the description box and the show notes for everything. Thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, I hope all your books are full of melanin. Bye!